So we want to talk about how to develop a comprehensive research proposal. Now, basically, a research proposal is just a plan to execute your proposed topic for your research. And why I'm saying a comprehensive means that I want to go into several aspects that ordinarily may not have been considered in a normal proposal. So there's some sort of extension. So this is likely to be the outline. We may not finish all of this today. I'll be just picking and choosing just to address the specific needs that we have. So I just want to define research. I know you know the meaning of research, but I just want to have you to have this definition in context. All right. So a school of thought thinks that research is a scientific and a systematic search for pertinent knowledge on a specific topic. Now look out for these words. It said it's scientific. It means it's science. Science talks about discoveries, right? Science talks about, innovation, invention, but it uses a certain systematic approach. It uses a certain laid down procedures. There are processes that you go through to be able to establish a certain premise or a certain knowledge. So when they say research is scientific, it means that it has a certain methodology that you follow to be able to achieve the ultimate objective or aim. And because it's scientific, someone else can follow that same procedure to achieve either similar or same results. Okay. So when we say it is a scientific and systematic, that's what it means. And you need to get this thing in perspective. Because it's systematic, you cannot sit and just develop your topic without following the science aspect of research. You cannot do that. You cannot conduct literature review without following the science aspect of it. You cannot, for instance, do a study, let's say a quantitative study, using certain variables in your topic without telling us how you got those variables. In other words, without doing a theoretical review for us to know where those variables came from. And I can give you an example. Maybe you want to do a study in, I was using this as an example. We're doing something on solid waste management. And you want to define, let's say, the demography of the respondents. Now, once you are defining the demography of the respondents, you are doing something on solid waste. Maybe it's within the range of social sciences. It's not in the econometrics. So you talked about gender and you're defining gender. And for you, gender means probably male and female. But when you move to a different discipline, and then you are talking about gender, gender might not mean just male and female. Gender might mean more to just somebody being male or female. So in research, if I pick a certain demographic characteristics and I want to define them, and I'm using it within a certain context, it's important, especially when I'm doing a quantitative study, to be able to tell my audience or my readers where I took that variable from. And that's why we say that if you're doing a quantitative study, you would have to underline or underpin your topic with a certain theoretical, framework or a theoretical understanding. The reason is that those variables that you have in your topic, they did not just come from the sky. They have been grounded somewhere by a certain theory. Those constructs belong to a certain theory. That same construct may belong to an econometric model somewhere, or a theory in sociology, or a theory in philosophy, or a theory or in something. And we want you to give that definite definition that this is where I picked it. So this is just to tell you that because it is scientific, you cannot do things anyhow. All right. Now I would pick another one. And if you come to down here, it said it's still a systematic approach concerning generalization and formulation of a theory, which is also a research. So a systematic approach. Now the word systematic is now being repeated here. And it's a concerning generalization. In other words, if you're doing research, there's some part of research that we can generalize what the findings. And that's where the issue of population comes in. I mean, we use population because that is the study setting, or those are the who in our research, those we want to study about. So because resources are scarce, we cannot, if we're doing a study and we want to consider 30 million people in Ghana, we cannot administer questionnaires or cannot interview all of them. So population tells us, I mean, the study setting and the who we are studying about. Your population could be not human beings, it could be animals. The population could be things. My research, I mean, in the port industry, my population was made up of containers and then vessels. So they were not human beings. So your population could be anything. But he's saying that the systematic approach concerning generalization, and generalization because in quantitative study, we should be able to use a sample within the population to generalize the findings, all right? To generalize the findings. Because resources are scarce, we cannot pick the entire population, we pick a sample. And there is a prescribed method that we use to establish the sample size. And this is rooted in literature. So when you are doing a study and you are doing a quantitative study, for instance, and want to establish your sample from the population, it behoves you to follow that scientific method. Now, Yima, the issue about science comes in here, and I want you to keep that in mind. You need to follow that science. So whatever we are doing from the topic formulation to the introduction of the study, developing the problem statement, establishing the objectives, asking questions, that is the research question, in some cases establishing the hypothesis. Okay, this is based on science. It is not something that we just do, right? It's based on science, follows a certain method. And it says that the systematic approach concerning generalization and the formulation of a theory. The generalization aspect talks about the quantitative, method or approach in research. But the formulation of the theory talks about the qualitative research. Where we are saying that for qualitative research, we are not mandated or guided by any theory. In qualitative research, in fact, we discover. We do an inductive study. Inductive study meaning that we are collecting data, we are collecting the lived experience of the people, we are collecting data about the environment, and we are using that to arrive at a certain conclusion that will build a certain sort of theory, right? Or we will generate some sort of themes that we will study later. The quantitative guys will build on it. And let me state here that most theories that we see today, were generated through an inductive study, through what a qualitative approach. And there's something called grounded theory people have used. They are able to use certain methodology, follow a certain methodology, and then they are able to now ground the findings through ASIA coding, comparative analysis, constant comparative analysis, and they generate certain themes. And those themes are just left. And then the quantitative people would then collect data, take a sample and use that themes to administer some sort of questions. And then people will answer. Then they will be able to interpret it and confirm whether the findings are so. But to tell you the truth, that those things came from what? The qualitative study, right? So theories are mostly built through qualitative study, but confirmed through what? Quantitative study. So you see the linkage. Theories are built through qualitative study, but confirmed and validated through quantitative study. So I'm expecting that when you're doing a qualitative study, for instance, some people try, as a matter of, they say that I use a theory for the qualitative study for a guide, okay? But if you really want to do an inductive study, if you really want to understand and interpret human perspectives, then what you really need to do is you need to come from an unbiased, point of view, so that a theory will not guide you to limit, what you would want to do. So most qualitative studies are not guided by theory. They are not guided by preconceived some sort of preconceived, mind, or having something at the back of your mind. But they come from a raw point of view. But there are some sort of argument saying that you cannot have an independent mind when you are doing it. You need to have some sort of understanding. So you see some studies using some construct within a theory, not really using it as to develop a theoretical framework, but using that as a guide to administer maybe interviews and other things to get some sort of findings. But of course, that will be restricted, okay, in terms of the questions you want to ask. Another school of thought says that you cannot just go to town and be asking any question. But whatever it is, qualitative research, uses an inductive approach. Quantitative use deductive approach. And then when you combine the two, we call it abductive. That is the mix. So that's what I want you to know about what research. The other definitions, you can look at it. Now, having this perspective, then let's look at this. If you have any questions, you can ask, and if you want to throw in any point, anybody can say anything. It should be more of a discussion rather than just a lecture. If there's any point you want, I can see that Cynthia, your mic is live.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I muted myself. Let me mute it then. I'm okay. That's fine.
You didn't have anything to say. I thought you wanted to make a point.
No, I'm okay, sir.
Okay, so let's look at objectives of research. Now, Ima, are you on course?
Yes, I'm following you. I'm okay.
So when we talk about objectives of research, these things are basic, but you understand why we need to go through. So objective of research, the first one is to gain familiarity with a phenomena or to achieve new insight into it. And what I've done here is try to align the objective of research to the research designs, okay? The research design. So I'm saying that if you want to gain familiarity with a phenomena or achieve new insight into it, then you are doing more of an exploratory or a formulate research or study. Exploratory studies are more of qualitative study. And these things, take them as they are, and then you read further on them. So today you've heard that exploratory studies are qualitative study. We use inductive approach. We explore, we understand, we interpret. So those are the keywords you see with qualitative study using your objectives. If you want to establish the objective of such research, you see some taxonomies like explore. You see another one, understand, interpret, discover, etc. Your hand is up, Ima. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to take you back a little bit.
Go ahead,
Can I take you? Yes. We were talking of a qualitative study on a theory, and you said it's. I want to confirm this. You said it's inductive approach.
Yes.
Then you use it. Then you confirm it with a quantitative study.
Yeah.
And then that one is the deductive approach.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to confirm that then.
And then there's the abductive approach.
Abductive. Okay. Which is
the mix.
Which one is that? Okay, the mix. The hybrid. Okay. I'm okay.
Okay. So for the exploratory or the formulate research, we say that under the objective to gain familiarity with a phenomena or to achieve new insight into it. It's more of an exploratory, research. And I've said that exploratory research, if you look at the taxonomies that are used to establish the objectives, you see some key active verbs like explore. You see key active verbs like understand, discover, interpret. Sometimes you see investigate. Okay, these are taxonomies used for qualitative study. In fact, investigate is both used for qualitative and quantitative, studies. So take note of it. So we should be able to get to the extent that if I look at your topic and I see the way your topic is couched, I should be able to tell you from the topic that you are doing a qualitative study, you are doing a quantitative study, or you are doing a mixed study. You understand? So you need to get these things carefully well placed. 2 is to portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual situation or a group, a situation or a group. And we say this is a descriptive word study. Now we are talking about characteristics, okay? Characteristics. In fact, quantitative study, one of the key attributes of quantitative study is to look at population attributes, population characteristics. Okay, we just want, example, demographic. You want to see the age, you want to see the sex, you want to see, you want to see religion, and you want to see some correlation between, age and then religion, and then you want to see something about income levels, and you want to see whether gender has an impact on, has some correlation with what income level, whether if you're a male or a female, that has some sort of correlation with whether you earn high or low. Those are descriptive studies. And descriptive studies are more of using descriptive statistics, a little bit of correlation, but it doesn't go in depth. It doesn't, in fact, it describes, it doesn't predict. So descriptive study can be quantitative study alone, and it can be a mixed study. It cannot be qualitative. It can, take note of this. Descriptive study can be only quantitative or mixed study. In other words, within the descriptives, you can explore and describe. And the explore aspect is what? The qualitative. And then the describe aspect is what? The descriptive. Now, you cannot just explore. When you say explore, then you are doing what? The qualitative alone. But when you say describe, you can combine what? The two. So take note of that. And then we have the third one, to determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else. And this is straightforward. We say this is a diagnostic research study. Say you are determining the frequency. So frequency, the rate at which something is happening. You want to also see how it is also associated with for something else. So this is where sometimes you look at a study where a certain variable is predicting the other. Maybe an example is doing a t-test, right? A t-test will try to look at, we call it student independent t-test. There are two variables, male and female. You want to see whether the male is independent of what the female. You want to do that variation, maybe income and then educational level. You want to see whether if the income is independent of what the educational what level. So we call it student T. Or you want to do something we call ANOVA, analysis of variance, and that one is you having two or more what variables. So you want to do analysis of variance. That could also that's part of a diagnostic what research. Okay, so you are determining the frequency with which something occurs or with which it's associated with something else. And then we have the hypothesis, the last one that talks about to test hypothesis of a causal relationship between variables. And this is, in fact, this is the apex when we come to digging into the level of detail in research. In fact, in research, if we are doing an exploratory research, we are answering the question, we say what, right? We don't know, so we are asking what. If we are doing descriptive, we say we are asking why. But if we are doing diagnostic and then we are doing the hypothesis or explanatory research, then we are asking why. So what, how, and what, why. And so some people will tell you that at the degree level, we are asking what. At the master's level, we'll be asking how. And then at the PhD level, we'll be asking why. Because here we are establishing a causal relationship between two variables. And let me tell you the truth, Ima. It is not easy to establish causality. It is never easy. For instance, that because you are not learning, that is why you are failing in your exams. That if one doesn't learn, that person will fail. It's not easy to establish that. The most single reason why you are failing your exams is that you are not learning. You cannot establish that by in certain terms. Okay, you can't. So, in fact, in most cases, if you remember when we're doing equation of a line, when we're estimating the y and all that, you realize that when we are doing the estimation, the y itself has a cap on it. So the y is the estimator. It is estimating the y itself. Okay. So you see the y with the cap, meaning that the original y is now being estimated. So when you finish with your estimation, then they say there's something called coefficients of what? Correlation, right? Coefficients of, another name is determination. They say that, okay, your R square is maybe 30%. That means that the estimate or the prediction was able to estimate Y by what? 30%. What that means is that 70% cannot be explained. And that's why I'm saying that causality is very difficult to establish, because there are several other reasons why you are failing, not just because that you are, it could be that you're not having the peace of mind in the house. You got it? It could be the reason. It could be that you are financially handicapped, and you're having some psychological effect. So it's not just because you are not learning, even though learning may be one of the major reasons, but that's actually not the reason. You want to say something? You are muted. You want to say something?
As I said, possibly you are overfed.
You're overfed.
Well.
Okay, you don't want to go on the tangent of the stress. I agree.
Exactly.
I know you are home, so you want to play safe. That's fine.
Yes.
I understand. So maybe you are overfed. That could be the reason. So that is the objective of research. But you realize that even where we have gotten to, Ima, I mean, you are getting some broader understanding. I mean, looking at your topic, and that's what I want us to. That's the journey I want us to go. So when we are finished, I mean, you could even come up and tell me that, no, it means that we needed to do this. We needed to tighten this. We needed to change this. And that's what I want us. That's why we are doing this exercise. Then we have the motivation of research. We don't need to waste too much time on this. People do research for several reasons. I don't know why you are doing the PhD, but some people decide to get a research degree along with its consequential benefits. This one, I think I find myself here. Yeah, I want to get the degree and the consequential benefits of becoming a researcher, becoming a consultant and all that. And this thing is big. A number of people have gotten their PhD and they are hiding it. In fact, they are using it to stamp passports. They are using it to give recommendation for schools. They are using it, but they cannot use it for any other thing because the PhD went through them. They did not go through the PhD. You understand? So if you are not very careful, you get the PhD and you'll be even afraid to get out. Now, society knows that you have gotten to the apex in terms of knowledge, and they think you know everything, right? So when there may be a decision that has to be taken in your community, they will call you. And in fact, the fact that they know that you have a PhD and they call you doctor, right? And sometimes people mistaken us for the medical doctors. Medical doctors have a first degree. That's not, I mean, they have 2 more laps to get to where you are. But normally when they say doctor, people take it for medical. And the medical doctors, they also have their own clouds that comes with it. So when they say doctor, then everybody begins to look at you differently, right? Imagine that you are in a line buying watch and you see a student and say, hey, Dr. Ima, everybody's going to look at you. And if you are not very careful, they will say that come to the front and then let them serve you. You go to the bank, it's the same thing. So people, I mean, the PhD comes with some of these consequential benefits. And the other fact is that once you have gotten to that level in terms of knowledge, it's likely that you'll be appointed to some of the boards. I mean, recently, somewhere last year, I was asked to chair the NHIS, their review, board, ethics review board, academic of African business development. I was asked to be a track chair. Others also asked me to do something. I believe that if I didn't have a PhD, I wouldn't have that opportunity. So, I mean, for you to know that it is not just for a joke. I mean, these things so you have to be motivated. There's a bigger motivation. And also to desire to face the challenge in solving the unresolved problems. That is concern over practical problems, initiate what research. So you might want to use research tools. And I find myself also here. I want to use the scientific tools to solve problems, right? To solve problems. And I'm talking about practical problems, not just writing and being cited and being excited about it, but the fact that I'm able to translate what I'm doing to real life situation. And that's where the benefits comes. The dividends, that's where you get it. So for instance, a certain model that you have built, you are going to do something public procurement delivery. So assuming that you're able to build, I'm just conceptualizing. You're able to build something in the area of maybe a model. Maybe you decide to use blockchain to build a blockchain ready public procurement, delivery, okay? A blockchain ready to the extent that now the system is so tight, they have suppliers can go on the portal and register and be pre-qualified. The pre-qualification is based on logic. The system does the selection and does the grouping. No one has, as it were, any hand in it. And then there's a group of experts who are also asked to load their credentials on the system. They will form the evaluation board. They don't know themselves. They don't know where they are. The system picks at random a tender document and then send it at random to a group of evaluators who do not know themselves. They evaluate and send. The system selects who gets satisfy the minimal requirement, and then that person is awarded the contract. This is a system that is doing that. So you might want to do solve this problem that we have, because the law itself is rather helping people to, it's not preventing, but helping people to what? Steal. So for instance, there's a threshold for all the MMDAs to approve, right? So if someone want to award a contract of, let's say, an X amount, more than 1 million Ghana cedi, then what they will do, they'll stagger it to what, 200,000, and give it to the same person. But that's not the purpose of it was to prevent this and to make sure that there's competitiveness. So you might want to use the research to solve a practical problem, right? So that could be something that you want to do. And then 3, desire to get intellectual joy of doing some creative work. I find myself also, there's nothing, it's so gratifying to know, all right? In fact, it's so interesting that you know that you have knowledge. You see, it is said that knowledge is power, right? And that is true. even though I also believe that power creates knowledge, right? But knowledge is power. So we are doing some work on, this marble stones and granite stones. And then I got some data. Immediately I got the data. All of a sudden, everything about me changed. When I didn't have the data, I was rather begging for investors to bring some peanuts for us to start the project. But when I got the data, I realized that no, I have the power. In fact, I don't need to rush. I need to take my time and find the very good buyers. Even what the off-taker is giving us is very small. Because in fact, he was going to make about 500% profit. And we can even also strike a very good deal with. But at the beginning, for about 2 years, I didn't have this knowledge. But when that data came, it changed everything. And that's why we say knowledge is what? Power. It gives you a different perspective. And it comes with some joy that you know, because you don't struggle, you have the knowledge. And if you want to do something, it's not a problem. If you want to put up any write-up, you don't have to think because you know. Okay. And the fourth one is the desire to be of service to society. This one, most people do. And an example is the appointment that I had. Aside that, you'll be called to chair a function. You'll be called, as part of maybe an advisory board. To tell you also the truth, you might have international appointment. Maybe the UN might call you. When they look at your publication, they realize that you're publishing in a certain area that they are interested in. You'll be there. They will send you a mail that we've cited your publication in this area. There's this project coming on, and we want you to be the lead. There's a fund that has been provided, maybe $3 million, and we want you to lead this project. And that's it. That's just it. And that's why we are all being motivated to publish, because it creates more visibility for us. So to be of service to society is not just your nucleus society. It could be the bigger society. And then desire to get respectability. That one, I'm sure that when now and Cynthia, they are done. Wallahi. If you don't add doctor to their names,
you're in trouble.
Trouble go come.
You're in trouble.
With all this stress. that you see Cynthia and say, Cynthia, hey, after the doctor. And now you see now you call na.
She will remind you.
It will remind you that, please, it's doctor. You get it? So, in fact, it's only in the PhD that when somebody calls your name without a title, you can correct the person. Yeah, tell the person that, please, the name is not just this, okay?
Yeah.
Yes. You can demand for, yes. Yes, you can demand for it. Yeah.
Just 2 weeks ago at church, we're having a council meeting, and one of the church members, he just finished his doctorate, and they called him by his without the title, and he said, I don't usually do this, but please, I will want you to address me properly. I am Dr.
Yes, that's the word, properly.
I can't wait for this day.
Yeah. No, on one of the boards that I sit, where we approve data for, one of your Cynthia, one of your fathers, we call the father something, he's doing the PhD, and he said that he has been assigned to a certain, is helping the Ghana something, and then the guy is struggling. It's not this. He came. We had to drill him and all that. He should be in his early 50s and all that. But you see the struggle that they go to. He's doing something about public health and something. The guy is very good. He understands what he's doing. And this guy will finish and you come and call him father. No, you don't. You don't, even though for them, they don't even use those titles.
They don't use the
Yeah,
titles.
but then, yeah. So the desire to get respectability, this one, you see, it said desire to get. Now, it is something that when you get, you demand it. Right? Some of us do not care. I mean, whatever name you want to call me, that's fine. I would rather that you don't call me doctor. When you ask my name, I will not say I'm Dr. Boison. I will only say that I'm Dr. Boison, especially when I have a missed call and I'm calling back. Because if the number is not a number that I know, then I'll say that this is Dr. Boison. In my head, I might be dealing with somebody from the academic landscape or somebody who knows me to be Dr. Boison who is calling me. But if I have your number and you call me, I know you know me, I say, oh, this is Dave. You get it. And if I'm introducing also myself to people, I would not say that my name is Dr. Boison. I would say I'm drdavidkingboison. It is those who are probably making reference to my name who would then mention my credentials. And it is better that way rather than going to town and then you want everybody to know that you are called. You can demand for it anyway. Even where you even sit. I mean, when you come to in academia, where we are going for a possession for degree and all that, where after the high table, it is the doctors and the professors who sit at the front seat. You understand? And then the other ones sit at the other side because they will tell you don't have a surname, right? They have a surname. So that's what it is. So let's come to now research proposal itself. So when we say a proposal, it's just a suggested plan on how to carry your work. And predominantly it has some basic, outline. Every school has its own outline as to how it works, but you have to follow the school's outline. So we have introduction, we have the problem statement, you have objectives. Some schools that do not deal with objective, they deal with research questions. Others deal with key literature review. Others say it's preliminary literature review. It depends on the school. And then method to collect and analyze data. In some cases, you need to add what we call budgets, right? And timelines that you're going to use to finish your work. What would they call the next steps? Okay. Sometimes you have to do that, especially when you're doing a project thesis where money has been allocated for some funds to do a certain project. You need to come out with the that kind of outline. Now, down there, I have put something there. If you see at the very down left, I don't know who can read that for me on the page. Look at your left down. Are you guys
The
there?
wise wins before the fight, while the ignorant fight to win.
Okay. Now this is very instructive, and to the extent that in research or your journey to your PhD, there are some people who are fighting to win now, and they will still fight till thy kingdom come because they broke the rules. The rules they broke were the fundamental rules or pillars that they needed to build in order to be able to, grow, or after building those pillars, to be able to build the building very well, so that when the storms become very heavy, it doesn't, flood their house. So, reason why you see some PhD holders who are still struggling with some basics in research because the foundation is not good. And Yima, that's why we are doing this. Originally, I could have said that, okay, let me take you through your topic. Let me help you explain certain things with you. But I think that is very dangerous, because I'm saying it's dangerous. It will look like giving you a child a knife, okay, and asking the child, the child doesn't know what to use the knife for. And you might end up, one, disgracing yourself because you don't get the fundamentals. And because of this half-baked thing, you've gotten a number of people who are still, after 10 years or 20 years of having PhD, now even professors, do not understand the basics in research, but they are even in supervising people. They are just following some sort of basic rules or best practices. Sometimes they look at your literature review, and when you write voluminous, they give you marks. They don't even know what you are talking about. They don't even understand the structure of writing the literature, because these things are scientific. That has to be followed. So if you want to win before the fight, this was something that one guy called Osenshe Ushiba, who said that those who are skilled at combat do not become afraid. Those who are skilled at winning are not worried. Thus, the wise win before the fight, whilst the ignorant fight to win. Right? The ignorant fight to win. So you don't need to be ignorant. And my cliche is that you either drink deep or you don't taste. So if you really want to go into this and come out successfully, don't be that kind of like a discard attitude. So at the end of the day, you still have the PhD, but there's nothing you can do with it. You realize that when you put yourself on the scale, the weight is still the same. There's no value added because you have not really learned anything serious. Now, whatever frustration you guys are going through now, enjoy it. In fact, it's part of the training. All right. The sleepless nights, the shocks you get, sometimes you know that there's a PRP you have to do, or the fact that you know that the deadline is getting close. So your mind is always clouded when you go to work. You don't think about anything. You are thinking about problem statement. You are thinking about how to collect data. It is part of the experience, and that makes you a doctor. That experience, that's why you are different from the others. Okay? So if you don't go through this organic growth, and then it is, as usual, what happens every day. And there are some people who are living the life of the PhD life. They're even doing a part-time work. And you just think about it. You are there when they say PRP time is up, then now you start chasing, and you put something together just to present. But the journey is such that you outline your timetable and you know that you are in school. You are not being supervised by anybody, but you make a constant effort to study every day, because you know that is because the PhD, that's what it is. It's a self-study. No one is going to help you to study. And that's why, as you realize, your supervisor have left you to your fate. In his mind, what he's saying, that you think that it was easy for us to get a PhD, you to go. Go on that journey and also get your PhD. Nobody is helped. So you'll be just swimming in the wilderness. And by the time you realize time is up, people have done their PhD. My mates who have done it for 10 years, we started in 2013, I started in 2014. Some just graduated just last year, somewhere December, right? So 2013 to 2020, almost 9 years getting to 10 years. What happened? It was that kind of like a discard attitude, postponing things and then not being studious. But if you know what you want in this, then you need to have a reorientation and have your timetable to study. I have my PhD, and to tell you, I told Cynthia, and then even when I have my PhD, every day I read an article. I've been doing this since 2013, which is why I can speak for 10 hours without looking into any book, because I've been reading. I've been reading every article I see, I read. Every article I come across, I read. If not for anything, I'll read the abstract first and see if there's something good about it. I'll go to methodology, read. I'll look at the findings, you understand, look at some key literatures, just to get some new insight into, what I want to study. So take this as one of the advice. I just wanted you to I mean, see, this is some sort of a quotation, quote that I've been using, that in life, I have to win before the fight. In other words, I should know. For me, when I was going for my Viva, I knew I was going to pass and I was going to have even distinction. I knew within me. Why? Because I had done the heavy lifting work already. And it was time to just explode. Right. When I was having a session with Cynthia, I just told Cynthia that you'll be fine. She didn't understand what I said. But at the end of the day, even the little she did was appreciated. Na's own is going to be even massive. Same thing. If she follows those procedures, you realize that, I mean, it is a given. It's scientific. It's a given. I mean, they will have nothing to say because you have followed some sort of what procedures. Now, before we move to what the topic is in research, do you have any question you want to ask? I hope we are all alive.
We are okay.
Yes, we are alive.
We are there.
We are here.
But when I teach and you don't ask questions, two things. One is that you don't understand.
No, we are
Another thing
okay.
is
So,
we are okay.
Now, I have a problem. Where okay means what?
Dr. Boyson, I think that you've taken us through a lot of advice, and I mean it's well taken. When we get to the point where we have to ask questions, we will.
Okay, so let's look at what a topic is in research. A topic is a broad subject area to be investigated. It's a broad subject area. So when I say I'm doing something on procurement is a broad subject area I want to study. If I want to do something on solid waste, I'm mentioning solid waste because I have my big sister seated close to me, also doing MPhil, so listening. So she's doing something about solid waste. So that is a broad area you want to study. So we are saying that in trying to formulate your topic, develop your topic, one of the things that you need to look at, there are maybe 5 key things that you need to consider. One is that you have to allow your topic to evolve as you learn about it. The evolution of your topic means that you would have to get more ideas about the topic, and that will require that minimum you read about 15 papers, minimum, at the proposal level. I mean, Scopus or high index journals. If you like, even read 15 abstracts, right? 15 abstracts. The abstract should tell you one of the purpose of the study should tell you about, I mean, the method that was used to collect and analyze the data. It will tell you the key findings. It will tell you the recommendation, the implication of the study. These 4 or 5 things will help you to have an idea. In some jurisdiction, it will tell you about even the country that the study was done. So you have a small table, talk about topic, talk about, I mean, the author, their name, their reference. And we are looking at 5 years papers that are no more than 5 years. So within that band for social studies, social sciences, we can accept that. If you have more recent, maybe 3 years, superb. Okay, so you have the topic, you have the author, you have the methodology, key findings, and recommendation, and then maybe country where the study was done. And be very careful. Sometimes you might see some people in China conducting study in Ghana. So if you look at just the departmental names and other things to look at the study, you'll be having a mistake. You'll be getting it wrong. So what you can do is look at the abstract. Sometimes they will tell you what the population setting is about, or go to the methodology. You would see, I mean, or at the end of the introduction, they will try to establish a firm the objective of the significance of the study, and you might see it there. So you have to allow your topic to evolve, and then let evidence lead you to your final topic of it. Evidence means that let literature lead you. Let empirical literature. Empirical means that we have used scientific means to generate those findings. That's why it becomes empirical. So let that one lead you to what your topic. And then find a topic that you can add your own idea. So a topic born out of empirical study, but can help you to add your idea. So let me give you a typical example. So you want to study something about procurement, okay? But the studies that you have looked at, a number of people are saying that, okay, they've done something in e-procurement and all that, but you realize that no one has attempted to probably use maybe smart contract for e-procurement, or maybe blockchain, or has used maybe some sort of technological adoption model, okay, to see whether people are receptive in adapting e-procurement or not. So where you add your idea is the fact that these are the studies that has been done. So you ask yourself, is it possible that I can apply the same study to Ghana? Those are the ideas that you have, because the literature has said that that kind of work has not been done in maybe the West African sub-region based on your search. So the ideas that you are adding is, trying to use that same theoretical framework to understand that subject within the Ghanaian context. And then we said your experience in the field can also help you. Your experience in the field, so if you are procurement or you are into sanitation, it can help you in your area. In the sanitation, if you are doing something about waste management, it should help you, guide you, because you understand the topic. That should shape it for you based on the literature. And sometimes if you look at other theses or other publications, there is some aspect that people don't look at: limitations and future study directions. In fact, you could pick someone's limitations and future study direction who did something in the same area. You could use that and recouch it as a topic. That one, if you pick it, lift it that way, it is easy to establish the problem statement directly. So you can say that in the study of Emmanuel 2023, the author prescribed a future study indicating that there is paucity of literature, or further study should extend the model, maybe the procurement model, to cover areas or blah, blah, blah. In this way, this study intends to use this model and extend it. The problem, the gap has been fixed straight up, because you lifted it from there and he was telling you that this is what I have done and these are the limitations that I found, okay? You can even pick 2 or 3 limitations and future study direction and put it together and say that that is the gap that you are filling. Okay, that can also be done. So this is what you do about your topic. Normally, research follows this kind of pyramid approach. Some people believe that you can turn it upside down like a cone. But this pyramid approach means that at the time that you are developing your topic, the topic, even though it's broad, it looks very steep at the top, right? And that is what you are now going to break down. So from the topic, now you are looking at the topic, let's say public procurement or e-procurement or solid waste management. So the problem statement is now telling us the aspect of e-procurement or aspect of solid waste management that this study is going to discuss. And the problem statement is always the storytelling stage. That's where we tell the story. We tell the story about previous literature, what they have done. We tell the story about the areas in the topic that we will be studying. We describe it. We also tell the story about what we think that has not been done and that which is a gap. We also tell the story about the significance of the study, okay, the contribution of this study to, the body of knowledge, also to the case study organization, and also to the industry. We talk about that in the problem. So the problem statement is what I tell the people. People think that the problem statement should be very short. In fact, there was some back and forth with one professor, and I told the professor that, see, if the problem statement is not more detailed to tell the story, then what are you solving? Because the introduction rather is giving you a description or a summary of the whole proposal. But the storytelling is the problem statement. That is where you need to justify that you have read enough to be able to understand what you're doing. And watch this. So the topic, the problem statement goes to the specific areas in the topic. And then when you are done, that's what you do. These specific areas in the topic, you use them to set what we call targets. So you have a problem. Now you are setting target how the problem should be solved. You are saying that if we're able to achieve these milestones, we're able to solve the problem. And that's what we call objectives of the study, right? So there are milestones so you ask yourself, and that's where we have issues with you. We say that your study lacks what we call validity. Validity is that you have not used a scientific approach to drill down the topic. So topic is the broad area. Problem statement is the specific areas in the broad topic that you are dealing with. Now, these specific areas. So let me give you a typical example. You are doing something about public procurement, modeling or developing a model for public procurement, right? Public procurement is big. Now, the public procurement delivery, if you look at the act, it talks about what? Fairness, accountability, it talks about transparency and all that. Maybe for the purpose of this study, you are talking about just value for money. You are talking about just transparency and fairness. But the act talks about accountability and other variables. So if this is what you are dealing with, remember the topic is saying procurement. So everybody thinks that you are carrying everything. But if you go to the problem statement, that is where you state that for the purpose of this study, procurement will be, the definition of procurement will be limited to one, value for money, transparency, accountability, that area. Then you pick now them one by one to tell the story. Then tell us previous literature, what they've done in that area. Now, once you have done that, remember those variables that you dealt with, that is the same variables that you use now to establish your objectives. Because that's what is being studied now. So you set your objective using what? The SMART model, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timeline. So your objective should be SMART. When considering, for instance, what the taxonomies, and we have said this several times, some of these objectives, and this is what I said initially, when I see that you are saying that explore, I know that you are doing qualitative study. That objective is what? More of the design of the research will be what? Qualitative. When you say assess, I know it's quantitative. When you say investigate, I know it can be qualitative or quantitative. When you say establish, I know it's quantitative. When you say analyze, I know it's quantitative. When you say evaluate, I know it's quantitative. If you say discover, I know it's qualitative. So these taxonomies should be at fingertips. And you should know them by heart. Okay. Now watch this. Once the objectives have been established, now this is what you are saying, that to be able to achieve this objective, you need to ask questions, and that when these questions are answered, you can achieve the objectives, which would then solve the problem. Have you seen the linkages? And that's why in research, we ask questions or we test hypotheses. This is what you can do. In some jurisdictions, they don't set objective. They rather ask questions to address the problem. In that and those type of structure, you have the research questions and you either have hypothesis in addition to the research questions, or you just have research questions. Right? That is if we are doing mostly qualitative, research. The research questions are there without hypothesis. If quantitative, you see some sort of hypothesis in there. So the school of thought that uses the research questions, such research question has have that thought that once these questions are answered, then we can achieve the objective. And watch this. Remember that is the research questions that we use, or the hypothesis that we use to develop the questionnaire. Because it is those questions, that questionnaire, those research questions that the questionnaires have been developed under using the teams, that the respondents must answer, that when we receive the answers and then we do the analysis, it will help us to achieve the objective, and then we will solve the problem. You see how it works? Or the hypothesis that has been established, when we test the result, we'll achieve the objective, and then that will solve the problem. And that's the science we are talking about. Now, once the research questions has been established, now watch this, an interesting thing. In some jurisdictions, you see the literature review, the research question comes, and then the literature that relates to those questions are reviewed. And you can do it this way. You can decide as a matter of convention that if you pick each research, if you have 4 research questions, you pick each research question, you will look for 5 or close to about 10 papers, current papers, that has been done under those teams. Within those teams of what the research questions. Okay. So if your first research question is saying that to what extent, you understand, does value for money affect public procurement delivery? Then you are talking about value for money and public procurement delivery. So I'm going to look for articles that have done something under value for money in attempt to achieve public procurement delivery. And I have about 10 of them reviewed extensively under them. Now, the idea is this. When it is structured this way, at the finding stage, which is the last stage, where I have found I've generated the analysis, and now I'm doing the discussion, because it was the same question I asked that I reviewed related literature. What will happen is that what I will find will rather confirm what I have reviewed, reject it, or come out with new findings that has not been found within the literature I reviewed. That is what is going to happen. And the reason why people don't get literature to even back their discussion is that what the reviews they didn't do the reviews taking into consideration the research questions. If they align it that way, they wouldn't have any problem. And then watch this. Also note that the problem statement, you told the story about the areas that you were studying. So if we're studying value for money in procurement, transparency and order, remember, it's the same thing you use in setting the target, right? So the reviews you did, the previous literature that you use in the problem statement, it's nearly almost all of them that you are going to use in your extensive literature review, especially the empirical review. It's the same papers you are going to use, and then you add more. So the one that will form the foundation is what you took from the problem statement. That should be repeated extensively and now review extensively in what the literature review. Because at the introduction, the problem statement stage, you might not be able to do a comprehensive literature review. You might talk about the method and just the findings. But when you come to the comprehensive literature review, you are talking about the purpose of the study, the method used, the findings, the recommendation, and the last question is, and so what? And so what? What is that review? What is the implication of that review on your current study? And that's what we do extensively at the literature review stage, right? So at the literature review, it's under what? The question. So research question 1, literature review. 10 of the research question 2, literature review, in that order. Some other people also develop what we call conceptual framework. They use a theoretical framework for it. So with that one, once they are using the theoretical framework, it is the construct within the theoretical framework that they use even in discussing the problem. And then they use those same construct to what? Establish what? The objective. And then they ask questions on them. They establish hypotheses on them. So it's the same thing, but they have a conceptual what framework. And what is a conceptual framework? We call it, maybe you have a theoretical framework, and then when you want to break it, you conceptualize. Now, it's theoretical framework because it's already established. All right. I saw in your work that you are using something, technology acceptance model, or UTAT. Okay, it's an already established theoretical framework. So if you want to conceptualize it, this is what happens. Conceptualization simply means that you are extracting some variables from the construct, right? And or you are taking those theoretical framework, hook, line, and sinker, and you are redefining the construct to align with your study. That's what we call conceptualization. So when you hear conceptual framework, what it means is that the researcher is thinking of using a certain theory, all right, taking the concept out of it, redefining it to fit what? The study. And that is where, if you use maybe a certain concept, you say that for the purpose of this study, procurement will be defined, or value for money will be defined. You understand? That it is this. You are now giving your own definition based on the theory, that they do not, take the definition as it is. Okay. And I want to give you a rundown on this. Most times I I'm somebody who always wants evidence. So I want to show you one PhD work. I think that I have Jethro's permission to use his work. Jethro, if you are here, if you get to see of this video, forgive me, because you did a very good work. I want to use this guy conceptualize something, and I just want to see. Are you guys there? Can I hear you? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I wanna. So he this is a model that was adapted somewhere, and he wanted to use. So he said source artist construct to internet adapted from and modified from this guy's. It was somebody's conceptual framework that he has adapted and then modified. Now he wanted to define something, standard of measurement. Now watch this. He says the measure of performance differs from one organization to the other. Now, he has this conceptual framework. He could say that standard of measurement, the way he picked it, in fact, he picked standard of measurement from somewhere and then brought it in here. But this one has its own. The other ones you are seeing, they are all there. But this one was picked somewhere. But look, listen to what he says. The performance, the measure of performance differs from one organization to the other. It is believed that most key performance indicators used by human resources are either influenced by gender biases, because research by this guy has shown that these instruments are developed by men, intended to be used for men at the disadvantage of women. Now, the standard of measurement of evaluation is described by this guy, by Kelly, as the tools or instruments used by an organization to measure the job performance of an employee. Now, he goes on to say a well-defined job description assists employees in knowing what is expected of them. It highlights the job essential tasks, responsibility, and functions, and emphasizes the general rules of the knowledge and skills for the employee to be successful. Now, it is also necessary for the workers to understand why the work exists. Now, this guy is conceptualizing standard of measurement, and see the premise he is given before he defines it. It says that where it fits within the organization and how the duties of the position are related to the goals of the organization and department. Now, listen to this. It said standard of measurement, SOM, is operationally defined. Now, operationally defined because it is within that theory and it has its own definition. It said it's operationally defined in the context of the study as tools, now in quotation, or instruments used by an organization to measure the job performance of an employee. Now listen, devoid of what? Gender biases. You remember he says that the standard of measurement are made for men, and it's always biased. Then he said the definition is adopted from Bakeli and modified to remove the male dominance. You know what this guy has done? What it means is that in this study, if you see standard of measurement, it is not what Bakeli said. He has given what? An operational what? Definition. Does that make sense? Operational what? Definition. Okay, it is not what he said. So when you pick a conceptual framework, that is what you do with this. Conceptualization means that I pick a theoretical framework, I'm adopting it. Adopting means I'm swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. If I'm adapting it, then I'm modifying it to suit my environment. Now, also on the literature review, what we discuss all this while is the empirical review. Empirical means evidential review, okay, based on evidence. Now, I've also talked about the conceptual review, which talks about concept. And I was saying that in relation to the fact that if you develop a conceptual framework, then what it means is that you'll be doing what I just discussed, okay? But there's also a bit that I've mentioned that when you are reviewing the literature, and it's a quantitative study, take note, there's a need to do a theoretical review. Now, the idea of theoretical review, I've already explained it, but let me rehash it, is that you are doing public procurement delivery. Maybe you have mentioned the word procurement in your study. The procurement, you need to tell us with theory has the construct procurement and how you are going to operationalize it. Now you understand operationalize, how you are going to define it to fit the study. And that is why a quantitative study, any construct within the topic, has to go through a theoretical review to say that now the concept procurement emanated or was retrieved from the theory of this. Do you understand? Which is operationally defined as this. So I know that construct in there, that's how it is defined. If you miss that, you'll be, punished, or you'll be found or flawed of what? Validity issue. Because we don't know the procurement you are talking about. We don't know whether it's procurement from physical sciences. We don't know whether it's procurement from psychology. We don't know, or econometrics. You need to tell us. So why do we do theoretical review? We do theoretical review to be able to operationalize the construct within what? The topic. Of course, the same construct that has been explained and extended in a problem statement is the same construct that has been used to set the milestones, that's the objective, and upon which we have asked questions, upon which we have established the hypothesis, upon which we have reviewed literature, okay? The empirical literature review. But we want to operationalize, we want to see where we took it from. If you don't do this, you'll be found, or you'll be punished for validity about issue. And then when you come to the methodology we are talking about, which research approach did we use? And to tell you the truth, if you do a very good set your objective and research question, during the research question, for each research question, you would know which method you are using to collect and analyze data at that level. So for instance, if I say one of my objective is to to assess the effect of value for money on public procurement delivery. Once I use assess, okay, then I know that, okay, I'm dealing with a dependent and independent variable, right? The effect of what? Value for money, independent. On what? Public procurement delivery, dependent. So in my mind, it is the relationship between what? Two variables. Now let's go back. Relationship between two variables. Have you seen it here? The objective of research, to test hypothesis of a causal relationship between what? Variables. So here, straight away, I'm doing an explanatory what? Design. You see, it is just like that. Explanatory what? Design. I have it there.
Dr. Boison, I have a question here.
Yes.
But please land when you finish.
So explanatory design. So I know explanatory design, there are a number of research design. It is the mother of, when you talk about the why. So within the explanatory design, I can do a diagnostic study, which is also under it. I can do a correlational study, right? I can do that. Okay, I can simply do that. So it is important that even at the research question level, that's what I tell students. I can put the research question in a table, and I say research question 1, and I write research design, another column. And under that, I want to know research question 1, which design am I using? Which data collection technique am I going to use? Am I going to administer questionnaire? Am I going to use secondary data? And this, which instrument am I going to use? That's the questionnaire or whatever. And then the method of data analysis. Am I going to use, structural equation modeling? Am I going to use regression? Am I going to use ANOVA t-test? What am I going to use? I can put that one there. So you realize that at this level of the research questions, the methodology is dealt with. It goes with it. You are done. And then when you finish, you put all together. And even when you do it that way and you are discussing it in your research design, it makes work very easy. Because, there's a story that they need to hear. You will say that in order to align the research design, to align the research questions to the methodology, the various designs were used to address the specific research question. This statement, when they see it in your work, I tell you, they will know that the guy knows what he's doing because it is systematic, it's scientific, right? So that is done. So the methodology done. And then you come to what? The findings and the recommendation and all that. Now this, I'm telling you about the whole research.
Dr. Boison, can I ask a question on the
Please
methodology? So many a times I hear people ask, so what methodology are you using for your research? And you hear someone say, oh, I'm doing quantitative research or a qualitative research. And I'm wondering that if you have 4 objectives and it's varied, then what do you say? Because you cannot just say, I'm doing qualitative, when in your objectives, you have maybe 2 qualitative and then maybe 1 quantitative.
So you cannot say that. Because if it is so, then you are doing a mixed study.
A mixed study, okay. So I get confused.
No, so you cannot
so
say
are you going to say mixed study? That will sort of speak to the various
yes, exactly. So if all my objectives are using, I'm going to use a quantitative approach, okay? And I don't even need, I don't even need the methodology to even know whether I'm doing a quantitative and a qualitative. The research objectives and questions you tell me. Because if the first objective says to assess, it's quantitative. If the second one says
it's qualitative.
You understand? If it says to assess, it's quantitative. If it says to explore, it's qualitative. If it says to establish, it's quantitative. You get what I'm saying? So I can just look at my objective and say, but suffice to say, I need to, if I want to extend this, I have to add what? the methodology so that it makes life easy for me. And let me tell you, if you use this approach and you are doing a defense anywhere, they will be afraid of you. Because it is not easy to identify some of these things at this level.
Okay. So again, if you are doing the main work and you get to methodology, and because per your research questions, you are using 4 different methodologies, how do you capture it to sort of speak to the research questions? So are you going to bring in the research questions, or you just go straight ahead and talk about the methodologies, but sort of paragraph each of them? Or
you can do that. There's nothing wrong with paragraphing them, because you have 4 research questions, right?
Yeah.
And the 4 research questions have their own method of collecting data.
Yeah.
But you are doing that probably under research design. Let's take it, okay? You are discussing that under research design. So I would have said that, the research design was developed to align with what the research questions. You understand? The first statement, I've made that.
Okay.
All right. Then I would have said that research question 1 sought to. Do you understand?
Okay.
And then I talked about the methodology. Then I talk about, sometimes you see that even the mixed study that you said you are doing, watch this. One is just one of the questions was what? Just one of the question was what? Just one of the question was what? Qualitative, right? Now, because one of the question was what? Qualitative. Actually, what you are doing is to
assess.
No, I'm coming.
Okay.
One of the questions was qualitative. So, but what you have done is that your questions, your topic was maybe evaluating something. But in your research question, you have added maybe a 4th question, say, to explore. Right? Now, it makes it a mixed study. But watch this. 3 of the questions are quantitative. 1 is what? Qualitative. Then that takes you into the band of what? Creswell. I'm sorry, a call came through, not knowing the thing was on. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So where did I get to? What was my last statement? Hello. So I know where we started having.
Being quantitative and just 1 being qualitative.
So I'm saying that,
where you got to. So you are trying
1 being
to explain,
qualitative.
yeah.
So assuming that you have 3 quantitative, and 1 qualitative, that takes you to
I said I don't know if Ima and Jerry are also on. I can't hear them.
Oh, they are here.
Oh, we are on. I'm on.
We are here.
Okay.
So you have 3 qualitative, quantitative, and 1 qualitative. Now, Criswell is a master of qualitative study and then mixed study. And you realize that if your study is predominantly quantitative, okay, and there is a bit of the qualitative in there, just to throw more light on it, then you go to Criswell, who talks about explanatory sequential mixed method. Explanatory, okay, means that the work is predominantly quantitative, but the researcher thinks that there are other parts of the research that needs more clarification. And I can give you an example. So this guy is doing something about public procurement delivery. He has done all the quantitative analysis and all that. But what he needs to do is that he wants to find out that the finding is saying that, for instance, they are not able to achieve the effect of value for money on public procurement delivery is insignificant. That's what the quantitative, finding is saying. But Yima cannot put the findings there like that. No, I need to probe. So he says that no, if that is the case, let me interview, those who have been working with government contract for the past 20 years. And let me also ask PPA, the policymakers, those who have been around for 20 years. And let me find out why the findings is so. Then he goes to talk to them and he says that, yes, it is true because, our measure of value of money is mostly different from what, the act is talking about. Then he gets clarification why it's insignificant. So that becomes what an explanatory sequential mixed method. The reverse is true. 3 qualitative, objective, and then 1 quantitative. So this one, he interviews these guys and talks to them. But he realized that no, he cannot generalize the findings. So let me now extend it to the entire public, all right, and seek for their views to see whether these guys were telling the truth or they were not. That becomes an exploratory sequential mixed method, okay? And then they have the convergent, okay, mixed method, where you want the quantitative and the qualitative findings to converge. In other words, you want to see that whether the qualitative guys, what they are saying, and the quantitative guys, what they are saying is true. That one is 50-50. Then we also have the parallel sequential mixed method, where we are asking the quantitative and the qualitative, questions the same time to see what will happen. So the Criswell comes with, a very different types of mixed method. That's very interesting. Okay, for this guy, Dr. Jethro did more of, he did what exploratory sequential mixed method. The work was more qualitative. And then when he was done, he took some qualitative, quantitative administered questionnaire to explain some of the outcomes. So that's actually what, I don't know whether I've explained it to your satisfaction.
Yes, I'm okay. But in a situation where you don't have research questions, but you just have your topic problem statement and then the literature review.
It's same.
And then, okay.
It's same. Research question, objective, almost, you see, it is, some schools use objective, some schools use research questions. For instance, Kapala University, okay, where my good friend did his PhD, Dr. Blay, okay. If you look at their thesis structure, I think it's the most well-structured thesis. I'll share it with you guys. And they are dealing with, they don't do qualitative, they don't entertain qualitative study, quantitative study. And to tell you, if you look at their thesis structure, they deal with only research questions. Research questions, okay? They don't deal with objective, but it's the same. Now, what it means is that these people are saying that after the problem statement, don't establish your milestones, but you answer the questions, because if you answer those questions to achieve the objective, that's all they are saying. That's all they are saying. So these things, it depends on the institutions you are dealing with. Some people accept the research questions, the objectives at the same time. But of course, the objectives, some people, school of thought, believe that the objectives, the research question comes before the objective. Another school of thought thinks that the objective comes before the research question. Whatever it is, the objectives are the final targets that you are going to achieve, okay, as the measure of your success or otherwise in the research, if you are using that. If you're using research questions, it also becomes the target to see whether the questions have been answered or not in the research, and it achieves the same, outcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, any more questions?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a situation where we have both the questions and the hypothesis?
Yes.
And
the objective. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what happens. When you have this, what can happen if you are doing a purely quantitative study? You can have your research question, the objective, the research questions, by the hypothesis, right? Okay. Should be strictly based on the research questions. or part of the hypothesis should be based on the objectives, and another part should be based on the research question. You get it? You cannot have different, hypothesis, because it should align. For instance, if somebody is doing a mixed study, he cannot use hypothesis to set the qualitative, questions, isn't it? So he's using the research questions to ask the qualitative aspect, and then rather using the hypothesis to establish the quantity. So this one is two. It's a mixed study. Part is achieving maybe objective 1 and 2. Another part, the hypothesis achieving objective 3 and 4, in that order. So there are instances that you can have all. My work, I had all of this. My PhD thesis, I had all of this. Okay, and predominantly, I think Coventry uses this for GCTU. Coventry uses this. CAS uses this. I don't know about your school, whether they use this or not. But what I've seen from NAS work, I think there's research question, and then there's also what do you call it, objective. And I think you are free to establish any hypothesis if you want to. Are we good?
In my situation, my supervisor.
Hello. I lost you. I lost you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, I said my supervisor asked me not to mention the hypothesis. Rather, it should be the questions.
Because you see, because so that is true. Because it's at the proposal stage, right? When you come to the real writing, okay, because he thinks that it's too early to establish your hypothesis because it's still a proposal at this stage, okay? But in some jurisdictions, they do. That's what he said.
Yes, that is too early for me to identify a hypothesis. I should only leave it to your questions.
I'm grateful that I look like a prophet. So I think the same like yours.
Yes.
It's too early.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you see, he's saying that because he doesn't know your capacity. Because at this stage, it's still a proposal and there are changes. So if you are not very careful and you establish some hypothesis and all that, if your research questions and then objectives they go through, they are good. Then when you start the real thing, you can then do your conceptualization and all those things. All right. So the last bit has to do with the findings of the study. And also take note that the findings and the discussions and the recommendations, this is how it happens. Your findings will be based on the questionnaire, which is also based on the what? The research questions, right? Remember, the research questions was used as a caveat to review the literature. Remember, so you see the connection. And the same research questions, we had method of analyzing each of the data, which led to the administration of what the questionnaire, which led to the tools that we use in analyzing what the data. So in the findings, what we do is when we have reported the data, we will then discuss the data in relation with the literature that we have reviewed. And it's the same literature that was mentioned in the problem statement. It's the same literature that was reviewed under the questions. And those questions emanated from the objectives. Okay. And the objectives were targets set out of the problem. And the problem described the specific areas in the topic that was studied. So we say that we have achieved what we call validity. And this validity has nothing to do with the instrument that you are using to collect your data, but the whole validity of the work and how reliable the results will be because you follow the scientific approach to generate what your findings. This is what the scientists, they do. We are also scientists because we are social scientists, okay? And this is what they do. And they can tell you that, okay, when you apply this to this, it will work. When you apply these findings, it will work. So most times for the journals, if they will accept your paper, they look at these things. They look at the, recently, one of the guys that we were training, we asked them to put up a paper, and I realized that he was doing the discussion and was using a different literature. And then I asked, but where is this literature come from? Do you review the literature? He said no. But as I said, how is that possible? And how can you take a literature from somewhere to discuss the findings when that literature, in fact, did not contribute to what? Answering your research question. It doesn't make sense. So you are fouled seriously for validity. Okay. So the findings, at the stage of the findings, you are still discussing the findings under the research questions. Under the research questions. But when you come to your chapter 5 and then you are concluding, then you bring the objectives, right? At the conclusion session, we conclude under the objectives. So objective 1, we set out to do this. Did we achieve it? Then the conclusions come. Objective 2, we set out to do this. Did we achieve it? Conclusion 2 comes in that order. And then based on the conclusions, we give the recommendation, also recommendation based on the conclusions that we have reached, which has been discussed under the objectives. And then let me tell you this. I take research always, I use this as an example, and Cynthia and Nan knows I've cited this example before. Now you go to the hospital, right? You go to the doctor to diagnose you, see whether you are sick. So you go to the doctor and say that, doctor, I'm sick. And he says that, okay, let me see. Tell me what is wrong with you. He said, I feel cold. The doctor has a database in front of him. So when you say you feel cold, he types cold. And then you say that I've been vomiting. He adds to it. Then you say this. Then what the doctor will do is, when he searches, the literature on someone feeling cold would give what? The symptoms of which disease. So he sees on his, on his computer. So in his head, he knows that, okay, there are symptoms of what? Malaria. So he would have written suspected what? Malaria. But he cannot conclude. So what he will do is that he says, go and do lab, right? So let's take our lab as what? The test of hypothesis or the administering of the questions to see what is really happening. You go and then you test, the lab technician tests you and then give you the result. Then you go back to the doctor, the consulting room. Then they say that, they tested and then there was some viral, how do they call it? Viral load or something, right? So then the doctor says that now he has the results. So now the results that he has confirms what he reviewed, what he searched and then saw. Then what he will now do is the doctor is now going to conclude, because he set the objective that they suspected what? Malaria, what? Parasite. That was the objective. But the findings has confirmed, that is the test has confirmed. So now he's going to conclude. That he says that now you are sick of what? Malaria. That's the conclusion. Then recommendation. Now, give him artesunate amodiaquine. Then instructions, take 2-3 times daily. What I'm talking about is what? Recommendation, isn't it? Take note. People write their recommendation and they write a chaff. They write background and so many things. If you've been watching how aeroplanes are flown, pilots, the way, the pilot knows everything, but he has an instruction book. And the instruction book, he has to follow the instruction book regardless of the knowledge he has. And the instruction book is straight. It's the same thing in recommendations we do in research. Because you are now the doctor prescribing medicine for what? The patient. So you don't use a statement like maybe and then no. It is active verb directing the person to do some specific what function. You understand? So you see the doctor take 2-3 times, this 2-3 times a day. I mean, avoid this. He will even tell you the hours of the day you need to take it, and it is instructive, right? So that's actually the whole, and that's how I understood research. So anytime I'm dealing with a student, in my mind, when we get to research questions or hypotheses, I know that the doctor has written what? I mean, a test for you to do. So we are going to the lab, and the lab is the statistical tools that we are using to test. You get it? So when we test and the outcome, if it was a relationship between, I mean, two variables and they say there's a statistical significance between the two, then it tells me that, okay, that's what found. So once there's statistical significance between maybe age and gender, then that is fine. If we're using that as an example, then I come and conclude that the study concludes that there's a statistical what significance between age and what gender. Now recommendation. You understand? If there is so, then what are you recommending? Then you recommend whatever you want to, recommend. So that's how, it looks like. I would like us to pause here. And let me tell you, I've given too much information within this short while. Okay, too much. It's about 6 months, study that I've decoded, that I've downloaded, and I know it's a lot. So I'm going to recompile it, put it on YouTube, and then send it to you so that you read through. We're going to repeat this whole thing, tomorrow or Saturday, and we're going to move from here, not repeat. We're going to move from here and then take it to the next level. So if you have any question, you can ask.